Is a media partner for NJ Spotlight on Cities, a day-long look at the impact of New Jersey's urban centers on the economy, schools, and quality of life. Details at njspotlight.com.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Kelly McEvers. To register to vote in Kansas, you have to prove you are a U.S. citizen. That requirement has held up tens of thousands of registrations, and it's produced an enormous list of would-be voters in electoral limbo because they haven't shown a birth certificate or passport. Now, the top elections official in Kansas wants that list purged, and as Frank Morris of member station KCUR reports, that's leading to a fight.
Like a lot of people, Cody Keener registered to vote for the first time at the Division of Motor Vehicles.
I went in to renew my driver's license, and I registered to vote at the same time.
Keener is 21, comes from a long line of Kansans, so he figured he was set to both drive and vote. But he was wrong. He recently learned that his registration is incomplete because he hasn't shown proof that he's a U.S. citizen.
It's very discouraging to young people. I'm a full-time student. I work anywhere from 20 to 30 hours a week.
Keener says digging up the documentation to complete the registration will be a hassle. It turns out his wife is also on the state's list of suspended voters, along with more than 36,000 other people, a group that would just about fill a Major League Baseball stadium.
And when you have that many people who didn't finish their registrations, you know something is the matter with the law.
That's Marge Arns with the League of Women Voters here. She says the list has exploded since 2013 when the state started requiring proof of citizenship. It's ballooned into by far the largest of its type in the country. Unlike Arizona and Georgia, other states that require proof of citizenship to vote, Kansas has never imposed a time limit on completing a voter registration.
Looking at the other states, we realized that we should have had this time limit in the first place.
Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach is at a firing range in suburban Kansas City for a meeting of the local Young Republicans Club. He presents himself as kind of an elections lawman, guarding the political process from people bent on hijacking it.
There is a problem with aliens getting on our voter rolls, and every time you have a close election, there is a significant possibility that a handful of votes cast by non-citizens may have swung the election.
Kobach claims the state's elections are now the most secure in the nation, but Arns says it's more of a model for how to discourage voting.
It has intimidated the public about the vote. It has essentially kept 36,000 off the vote.
A trickle of people are completing their incomplete registrations and joining the voter rolls. But many others are slowly being scrubbed from the list because of Kobach's new rule, allowing elections officials to delete incomplete registrations 90 days after they're first filed.
This is not an undue burden on anyone, this 90-day rule, giving a person 3 months to prove up their citizenship after they start the process. And if a person still doesn't do it within 90 days, they still have a chance to just fill out the card all over again and give themselves another 90 days.
But deleting the voter registration applications raises legal issues.
This is where there is a collision between state law and federal law.
Paul Davis is representing Cody Keener in a federal lawsuit challenging Kobach's 90-day rule. He asserts that voter registrations at the DMV are protected.
Because under the National Voter Registration Act, those voters like Cody Keener are federal voters and they cannot be removed from a voter list.
Whether or not people who register at the DMV in Kansas without showing proof of citizenship are federal voters or Kansas voters or just not voters at all may not be settled before next year's elections. For NPR News, I'm Frank Morris.
It's time for All Tech Considered. Twitter is one of the most well-known and influential social media platforms. It helped launch revolutions in the Middle East, and it's a big source of news around the world. But its financial success doesn't always match its name recognition. And now there's news of some layoffs this week. NPR's Laura Seidel joins me now to talk about Twitter's struggles. And first, tell me about these layoffs that Twitter is expected to make.
Well, it's been widely reported that layoffs could come as early as tomorrow. I've had it confirmed by a very knowledgeable source, though at this point we don't know how many people are going to be laid off. So we will find that out a little later this week.
So why is Twitter struggling?
You know, I think part of Twitter's issue is that it's got other companies snapping at its heels, taking up social media time. So you've got Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, and Instagram's growing much more rapidly than Twitter. Over a period of 9 months, Instagram went from 300 to 400 million users. Meanwhile, Twitter has been hovering at around 300 million users and growing much more slowly.
Yeah, I mean, Silicon Valley, it's all about growth. I mean, why isn't Twitter keeping up?
I think part of the issue is that compared with some of these other sites, it's actually harder to use. It has this 140 character limit, and it's this open platform, right? And you can see anyone's tweets, but you have to follow them. And knowing who to follow can be confusing for a lot of people. So in a recent post on his website, early Twitter investor Chris Sacca claimed that 1 billion people had actually tried Twitter over the years, yet only about 316 million have stuck around. And I would say there's also this sense that Twitter still doesn't really know what it wants to be when it grows up. My sources tell me that even inside the company, its mission isn't really crystal clear. And some people say Twitter is a news site. Other people say, you know, it's really just a social media site. So I think one of the new CEO's biggest jobs, Jack Dorsey, is going to be to make Twitter's mission clear.
Well, tell me a little bit about Jack Dorsey. He's also one of the founders of Twitter. He's actually gone on to found another company, the mobile payment company Square. Is he going to stay on as the CEO of Square while he's running Twitter?
Yeah, actually he is. And I will say this is not unprecedented, Kelly. You know, Steve Jobs ran both Pixar and Apple for a while. Right now you have Elon Musk, who's running both Tesla and SpaceX. So, and it's not clear that, you know, Dorsey is as talented as either Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk.
Okay, so he's already been running the company for a few months, and you talked about these layoffs. Has he made any other changes to Twitter as a product? Anything to make it more attractive to users?
Something called Moments is what he's added, and this starts to assemble the best tweets around a topic. You know, say when Kevin McCarthy decided to take himself out of the running for Speaker of the House, you could see tweets from people like Senator Harry Reid, and Twitter has officially partnered with, say, the New York Times and the Washington Post. So anybody will be able to look and get the latest tweets about a particular news item. You know, and I think the hope here is that you're going to get more ads, and this is going to be an easier place for advertisers. But I think the challenge is, remember, Chris Sacca said 1 billion people have already tried Twitter. How are you going to get those people to come back and try it again?
Okay, that's NPR's Laura Seidel. Thank you so much, Laura.
You're welcome.
Support for All Tech Considered comes from Carbonite, providing secure, automatic cloud backup and recovery solutions for businesses and homes. Learn more at carbonite.com. And from Farmers Insurance, whose agents can educate people on common insurance gaps to help them prevent unwanted surprises. More at farmers.com/gaps.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News.
This program is brought to you in part by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Support for NPR comes from WNYC members and from Red Hat, providing enterprise open source software solutions to companies in the Fortune 500, including airlines, commercial banking, telcos, and healthcare. Learn more at redhat.com. Red Hat, tried, tested, trusted. Classic Films LLC, presenting Billions in Change, a documentary of Manoj Bhargava about wealth and responsibility and the work he's doing in the areas of water, energy, and healthcare. Available for viewing at Billions in Change. MoveOnChange.com. And Moo, working to help bring business stories and brands to life through a range of printed products like business cards, flyers, stickers, and postcards. Also offering design templates and the option to upload a personal design. More at Moo.com.
Stay tuned. Coming up on 93.9 FM is Radiolab, and on AM 820 it's On Point. And tune in tomorrow, WNYC continues its award-winning reporting on police accountability this week with a 3-part investigation into what happens when police officers lie. Tomorrow, WNYC goes to the Bronx, where one cop got indicted for perjury. Hear what the NYPD did about it on Morning Edition and All Things Considered tomorrow. A slight chance of rain tonight, mostly after midnight. Otherwise, increasing clouds tonight with a low around 59 degrees. Tomorrow, chance of showers throughout the day, mostly cloudy, high near 73. And partly cloudy tomorrow night, low 56 degrees. It's 65 and clear right now in Central Park at 8 o'clock.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM, New York. Just keep listening.
Hey everybody, Jad here. Just one quick thing before we start. I want to let you know that this episode that you're about to hear is a rebroadcast of our very first show that we ever made. This was back in 2001 when Robert and I were, well, we were still figuring things out, frankly. I think you will hear that shortly. It was a little rough, but like we were still figuring out what kind of stories we liked, what sort of sounds made sense to put with the stories. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And a lot of figuring went into this first episode. So for those of you who were listening from the beginning, we hope you enjoy this rebroadcast. And for those of you who started listening a little more recently, we hope you enjoy this little peek back at our early work.
Okay. You're listening to Radio Lab. Okay. On New York Public Radio. Public Radio,
Recently, we interviewed a guy named Steven Johnson who wrote a book. And he tells this story of how the book came about.
There was one specific event, actually, that really kind of triggered it, which is that I tried a biofeedback experiment.
He had found a place where he could get hooked up to a bunch of sensors and probes and then see what was happening inside his body in real time.
So I went in, having been kind of curious about this, and tried it out, and it's a kind of a therapeutic environment where there's a kind of a doctor who sits there and talks to you. It's a bit like going to a shrink. And we started this session, and there's a little screen, and you see this little line kind of scrolling along. And initially, it's very even, kind of flat line, and after about a minute or two of talking, the doctor actually said, your adrenaline system seems very well regulated.
Like
and I said, thank you very much, thank you. I've always suspected it was. And then, for some reason, about a minute or two after that, I decided, as I sometimes do, that I would make a joke, and so I tossed out some stupid little joke about something, and instantly, a huge spike appeared on the screen. There was this giant kind of surge of adrenaline that had been released in my body. And we both kind of turned and looked at the monitor and said, whoa, what was that? And then at the end of this session, we talked for about 30 minutes, and he gave me this printout of the whole session, and it was effectively a chart of my attempts at humor. This flat line interrupted by 6 spikes of jokes, successful or otherwise, that I tried to make. And I looked at that and I thought, of all the times over the years that I had found myself, making borderline inappropriate jokes in situations where a joke was probably not the appropriate thing to do, when I teach, compulsively making jokes to get laughs from the students, and I thought somehow years ago I set up this little circuit in my head that I guaranteed me this little jolt of adrenaline every time I made a joke, and I felt kind of like a drug addict more than a funny guy.
A glimpse of himself he was not prepared for. And it got him thinking.
How many other routines like that are going on in my head at any given time? And what would happen if I went out and tried to track them down?
What would happen is he wrote a book about the brain, which in turn got us interested in the brain. And what better time? In the thousands of years that human beings have been curious about what's going on in our heads, we can actually find out now. Get inside a charged, buzzing brain remotely, while the owner of that brain is still alive. Doing normal things like wiggling a finger or drinking a Pepsi. Using giant magnets, researchers can watch blood flow in the brain and guess at what part of the brain commands the finger to wiggle, what part likes Pepsi, what part likes Coke, Which part leans Democrat? Which Republican? Seriously, these are tests researchers have actually done. They've put brain imaging helmets on nuns as they meditate, sleepers as they dream. It is a new world. Not unlike 17th century Venice, when craftspeople figured out a deep mystery, how to take a piece of glass, line it with tin, and make a mirror. A mirror that was cheap and, more importantly, straight. All of a sudden, Europeans could see their own reflection as they actually are. Not wobbly or distorted. Or imagine even earlier when Narcissus accidentally catches his own reflection in a pond and is amazed at that mysterious person looking back at him from the cloudy depths.
I remember being 7 or 8, and I would, kind of look into the mirror and have those moments of like, that's me. That's me in the mirror. That's weird. What does it mean that I'm me? And I'd have those kind of slightly surreal moments when I was 7. And to some extent, I can't get those moments anymore. Like I could kind of get the weirdness of kind of looking at yourself and thinking, what does it mean that I'm me?
What Stephen Johnson just described, standing in front of a mirror and freaking out, is a little like repeating a word over and over. The meaning of the word gets disassociated from the sound, just like the image of you becomes disconnected from the real you, the inner you. The little guy sitting at the controls behind your eyes, the self, the soul, whatever you want to call it, that thing is something scientists are looking for right now. And it's what we'll be looking for this hour. Where is it?
Where is the inner real me?
Yeah, yourself.
That's such a big question. Well, introduce yourself and then we can begin talking about this.
Okay, this is Radio Lab. I'm Jad Abumrad, and you?
Robert Krulwich. We know that our bodies change, all our cells change, moods change, dreams change. Everything about a normal, healthy person is flux. Is